Just a few minutes earlier, after Bianjunwu left, Zhang Yi had felt much more at ease because he knew the investigation team had no immediate plans to leave. So, whether this was a conspiracy by the Baishui sect or not didn't matter. As long as Jiangnan Regional Investigation Team remained, Amami City wouldn't descend into chaos. However, Zhang Yi was naturally cautious, so he decided to visit Xiao Hanlian's assistant before leaving to gather information about the Baishui sect. When Zhang Yi met Xiao Hanlian, she joked, "Oh, the wind has blown our friend Zhang over. What brings you to me?" Zhang Yi looked around for a moment and then mischievously said, "It's nothing serious. Could you do me a favor and take a walk with me?" Hearing this, Xiao Hanlian was a bit surprised. She looked Zhang Yi up and down before responding, "Can I warn you not to have any ideas with me?" Zhang Yi quickly waved his hand, "You're overthinking it. I just need a small favor from you. It's not convenient to talk about it here with so many people around." After hearing Zhang Yi's explanation, Xiao Hanlian felt relieved and agreed to accompany him, as she was also curious to find out what Zhang Yi was after. The two of them then walked to a secluded area. At this point, Xiao Hanlian asked seriously, "Now can you tell me what you want me to do for you?" Zhang Yi straightforwardly replied, "I need you to check some information for me. This shouldn't be difficult for you, right?" Xiao Hanlian slightly frowned. While it wasn't hard for her, she was curious about who Zhang Yi wanted to investigate since there weren't many people left alive in Tianhai City. Zhang Yi was seeking information about Qingpu, Zhaoyu, and the Baishui cult, particularly about their leaders and lieutenants. After understanding what Zhang Yi wanted, Xiao Hanlian faintly smiled and said, "The war is over, and you're still worried about them. Now you're the only one in Tianhai City, no one should be causing trouble anymore." Zhang Yi waved his hand and explained that he was naturally cautious and liked to be prepared. Xiao Hanlian then said mockingly, "I can give you their information, but you don't expect me to do it for free, right? What are you going to trade with me?" However, before Zhang Yi could ask what she wanted, Xiao Hanlian spoke first, "If I give you the information, I want a promise from you." Zhang Yi couldn't believe his ears and was curious about what she would ask for. Xiao Hanlian smiled wickedly, "If one day we are in danger, I hope you can help us out once." Zhang Yi found the request somewhat amusing, but he didn't show it. Instead, he pretended to accept the offer. In reality, if Xiao Hanlian encountered any trouble, Zhang Yi wouldn't mind helping out once, but if the cost was too high, it might be a different story. The two happily agreed to the deal. For Xiao Hanlian, it was a profitable deal. She didn't have to pay anything, just some data from the system. As for Zhang Yi, he got exactly what he wanted without giving anything in return. That night, Yuan Kongye organized a celebration banquet in the church. During the event, the major leaders expressed their intention to leave, as Tianhai City was now in ruins, and they needed to start over. Everyone understood this. However, at that moment, Yuan Kongye unexpectedly took out a few ice crystals. She explained that the major bases had paid a high price for this collapse and that she wanted to contribute to Tianhai City. So, she decided to gift the military with these ice cubes. Everyone was surprised and grateful, knowing the value of these ice cubes. But when Zhang Yi saw the ice cubes, a cold feeling rose in his heart, as if he was being hunted by a polar bear. Just a few minutes ago, Zhang Yi's doubts were growing stronger. As a top entertainer, sometimes his instincts were very accurate. If Yuan Kongye's ability truly involved bringing death, then by distributing ice crystals to the crowd, it meant that soon, she would be attacking everyone. Fortunately, Zhang Yi had vaguely guessed the principle of using the ice crystals, because when Yuan Kongye wanted to use it on Zhou Kale, she refused. This indirectly meant that the usage of the ice crystals tool was determined by the user. So, for Zhang Yi, he was temporarily safe. Meanwhile, the others, who were the first beneficiaries of the ice crystals, had all become party leaders after using it. They had a strong obsession with ice crystals, especially at a time like this, when they needed more pressure to enhance their force's combat effectiveness. Zhang Yi pretended to be indifferent, like everyone else, with a face full of anticipation as he accepted the coercion. He even claimed, "This time we owe Baishui a favor. If you need anything in the future, just let me know." The smile on Yuan Kongye's face grew even wider upon hearing this. "Mr. Zhang Yi, it's a bit distant of you to say that. In the future, we might become one. Supporting each other is only natural, so there's no need to be so formal." And with that, the farewell concluded successfully. Everyone was in high spirits, ready to return and build their power. However, Zhang Yi's heart was heavy. He looked at the 3 ice crystals in his hand and fell into thought. These 3 ice crystals were just enough for Kale. By using them, he could create 3 artists. But whether it would work or not, he hadn't made up his mind yet. Zhang Yi then looked at the crowd and considered whether he should stop trying to warn them. After all, as long as they were still alive, there wouldn't be too much of a problem. However, these people couldn't be fully trusted yet, and if things weren't handled well, he might expose himself. Later, Zhang Yi followed Xiao Honglian to her enemy. After all, this charming woman was leaving, and before she left, Zhang Yi wanted to remind her of their agreement. During this brief contact, they also developed a sense of mutual understanding. Just before leaving, Xiao Honglian generously gave Zhang Yi a hug. "Don't worry, I'll send it to you as soon as I get back." Facing this sudden gesture, Zhang Yi, with his cunning experience, wasn't idle either. He patted Xiao Honglian on the back and whispered in her ear, "We'll talk later." However, at that moment, a furious quarrel broke out not far away. They were both curious. Who could be arguing at a time like this? Looking over, they saw it was Kale and his little girlfriend, Shu Bebe. But in the context of this scene, she might as well have been his ex-girlfriend. However, Kale didn't think so. He was still trying to salvage the situation, hoping to touch Shu Bebe's heart through sincerity. But who was Shu Bebe? The reason she survived the apocalypse until now was due to her clear mind. If it weren't for Li Jian, how could she have ended up with him? The Iron Boys, together, were a formidable force. So, when faced with Kale's request to kneel down, she simply refused. But Kale couldn't accept the situation in front of him. He kept begging her to stay, even threatening his own life. Shu Bebe looked at Kale's childish face and shook her head helplessly. However, in order not to let the man next to her see her ruthlessness, she still said a few comforting words. But this time, the man was clearly impatient. He coldly said to Shu Bebe, "We should probably get going." As soon as Shu Bebe heard this, she turned around, reverting to her petite and cute demeanor, and said, "Sorry for wasting your time, brother. Let's go." Kale rushed up happily. Ever since he was injured by Yuan Kongyi, he had grown tired of this world. If it weren't for Shu Bebe's encouragement, he might have left this world long ago. So, he couldn't imagine what life would be like without Shu Bebe. But this time, Shu Bebe was too tired to hide anything anymore. She angrily shook off Kale's hand, and at the same time, the most hurtful words came out of her mouth. "You eunuch, is it over?" As soon as she said this, the air fell silent. Even Zhang Yi, who had been observing like a bystander, was shocked. What on earth was going on here? Shu Bebe realized that Kale was a eunuch, and the realization hit her hard. She apologized in a low voice and then left without looking back, wrapping her arm around her new boyfriend as they got into the truck. At that moment, Kale started shouting hysterically. He yelled while running in the opposite direction of Shu Bebe. Watching the scene unfold, Xiao Honglian smiled and commented, "This child has never suffered from love before, so childish." Zhang Yi remarked that this might actually be a good thing for Kale. "How can you see a rainbow without experiencing wind and rain?" he mused. Waving goodbye, Zhang Yi reminded Xiao Honglian not to forget about the information. Then, Xiao Honglian's team sped away. At this moment, Zhang Yi noticed Li Jian and his wife, anxiously searching for their son, Kale. They must have heard what just happened. Zhang Yi sighed lightly, feeling sympathy for the parents. 2 days later, Zhang Yi received the information sent by Xiao Honglian. The document included a few pleasantries, and after a brief video call, Zhang Yi stretched and relaxed. Having received the information, he knew it was time to leave Baishui sect to avoid trouble and planned to analyze the data with Yang Xinxin. However, before leaving, Zhang Yi decided to persuade Bian Junwu to stay in Baishui sect for a while longer to maintain pressure on the situation. With that in mind, Zhang Yi got out of the car to find Bian Junwu. When Zhang Yi saw him, he went straight to the point, saying there was something he wanted to discuss in private. Bian Junwu was pleased, thinking Zhang Yi had changed his mind and would return to the city with them. However, Zhang Yi quickly dismissed that notion, explaining that he still had concerns about the corpse crisis and wanted to discuss them alone. Wudi behind Bian Junwu was unsure of what Zhang Yi was up to, but they worried about Bian Junwu's safety. Just as someone called out, "Captain," Bian Junwu interrupted, pointing to a low wall nearby and suggesting they talk in detail over there. When they reached the low wall, Bian Junwu asked Zhang Yi to speak his mind. Zhang Yi turned to him, his face serious, and said, "Captain, I hope you can stay in Amami for a while longer. This zombie elimination operation seemed too easy to me. Given the high intelligence of the Zombie King, how could they not see through our trick to lure them away?" Bian Junwu paused, acknowledging that he had considered this issue before. "But the mutant zombie king isn't human," he replied. "His intelligence has its limits, and so far, there's no evidence of a larger pride." Zhang Yi responded thoughtfully, "So, has anyone seen the zombie king or other advanced creatures?" The choreographer didn't quite understand what Zhang Yi was getting at, so he urged him to elaborate. Zhang Yi continued seriously, "I suspect there's a mastermind behind the zombie. Those zombie kings are just puppets. Or there's an even more terrifying possibility. The so-called zombie kings are merely a spectacle arranged by the mastermind behind the scenes, putting on a good show for Jiangnan district." With this statement, Byung Junwoo fell into deep thought.